Hi, I'm Noah Michelson with the JSC External Relations Office. We've been receiving a ton of good questions from employees as we continue to navigate the COVID-19 pandemic and working in ways that, quite frankly, a lot of us are not quite accustomed to. To try to help ease some of the stresses that can accompany these changes, your friends at Roundup are going to sit down with some JSC leaders over the coming months to quickly touch on some common questions that have been submitted to Roundup. Today, we're sitting down with JSC Chief Counsel Ted Rowe to discuss the Hatch Act, social justice activities, and COVID-19. Let's jump right in. So today we're joined by JSC Chief Counsel Ted Rowe. So Ted, thanks so much for joining us today. Hope you're doing well during the pandemic.
It's my pleasure. I'm honored to be here.
First off, we're in an interesting election season. Can you talk a little bit about what the Hatch Act is and how it might apply to employees?
Sure. Yes, the Hatch Act is a statute that it's designed to prohibit political activity in the workplace, and it's divided into like what they call less restricted employees and more restrictive employees. So there are rules associated with whether you fall within one bucket or the other. For most of us, we're in the less restricted employees bucket. And for less restricted federal employees, which applies to pretty much, the Hatch Act overall applies to all federal employees except the president and vice president. Such less restricted federal employees may not use their official authority or influence to interfere with or affect the results of an election. So, for example, using your official titles or position while engaging in political activities, you can't do that. Or inviting subordinate employees to political events or otherwise suggesting to subordinates they attend political events or undertake any partisan political activity. You can't do that. For the most part, it has to deal with engaging in political activity in the workplace. And that, obviously that's prohibited. So things like actively distributing campaign materials or items in the workplace, or displaying campaign materials or items, or performing campaign related chores, or wearing or displaying partisan political buttons, that sort of stuff. So it gets a little bit grayer because we're in this mandatory telework environment. Obviously posting a blog on social media site that advocates for or against a partisan political party or a candidate for a partisan political office or a partisan political group is prohibited. And how do you balance that when you're in a telework environment? You switch off and on at a moment's notice, being on official duty and then saying no, I'm on my personal time. That's a lot more difficult in a teleworking environment. So you have to be very careful about switching back and forth between personal and official time. Just have to use some common sense there. For the most part, just don't comment or advocate for a partisan political party, candidate for partisan political office, or partisan political group in your official capacity or on official time.
And is this something that applies only to civil servants, or is this on the contract side as well?
Yeah, so it applies to federal employees, but it also applies to use of government property or facilities. So in our current mandatory teleworking environment, contractors a lot of them are using IT equipment and or IT resources such as MS Teams, which are government property. Thus, if a contractor employee is teleworking and using government IT equipment and or resources, political activity is prohibited on that equipment and or resources. And also, as we all know, what you say in a Teams chat is both recorded and it's not anonymous. You know who's saying what. So the take-home message is just use your common sense when you think about posting anything about a political party, a candidate for political office, or a partisan political group.
Well, and while we have, an election going on, there's also a lot of social justice movements taking place right now, one of which is Black Lives Matter. So I was wondering, how does Black Lives Matter fit into Hatch Act, or does it? And is that considered an inherently political activity?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question. And the short answer is no. It's not an inherently political activity. When we talk about the notion of what is an inherently political activity, we have to talk about obviously the Hatch Act and the prohibitions of the Hatch Act. One of those prohibitions is civil servant employees are prohibited from engaging in political activity while on duty or in a federal workplace, and that's obviously expanded to one's home due to telework. And now the good news is the agency in charge with issuing guidance and enforcing the Hatch Act is the Office of Special Counsel, or OSC for short. And the OSC has released a legal memo on this very topic, whether Black Lives Matter is an inherently political activity. The Hatch Act does not prohibit employees from engaging in issue-based advocacy, such as an issue not specifically identified with a political party or partisan political group. So after carefully analyzing the facts, the OSC concluded using Black Lives Matter terminology is not an inherently political activity. Therefore, employees are not prohibited from wearing or displaying Black Lives Matter paraphernalia in the workplace.
Okay, that's good to know. Moving over to COVID-19 and how that's kind of impacting employees. For employees who are currently working on site or may get asked in the coming weeks or months to return on site, are those employees able to claim or entitled to hazard pay?
No, unfortunately not. There's no authority to pay hazardous duty pay or environmental differential pay for potential exposure to a pandemic influenza. Hazardous duty pay for white collar employees and environmental differential pay for federal wage system employees are forms of additional pay for job related exposure to hazards, physical hardships, and working conditions of an unusually severe nature that cannot be eliminated or significantly reduced by preventative measures such as safety equipment and protective clothing. Hazardous duty pay, environmental differential pay are not intended to compensate employees for exposure to a safety risk unrelated to their assigned duties. So for most of us, working in the office, we are not exposed to the type of unusually severe, working conditions that cannot be eliminated or significantly reduced by preventative measures. So that's the bottom line, is that the simple answer is no. One cannot receive hazardous pay for exposure to COVID-19.
Okay. And for employees wondering, if you head over to the COVID-19 site, we have the center guidance that is intended to keep employees as safe as possible when we do eventually return to site. So going off that, another common question is folks asking if they are asked to come on site and they do get sick, they do contract COVID-19, are they covered under workers' compensation?
It's possible. It's certainly possible that a person would be covered by workers' compensation. So, the general process is if an employee or the family member of an employee believes illness or on-the-job death resulted from a work-related incident, they will be able to file a workers' compensation claim. However, the Department of Labor makes determinations on entitlement to workers' compensation on a case-by-case basis, and each case is judged on its own merits. So really, it depends ultimately on the facts of each case, but it's possible.
Okay. Well, thank you, Ted. That was so helpful answering those questions. Thank you for your time. Is there a place employees can send any other questions if they may have questions on legal matters?
Yes, I'm glad you asked that. So we do have a legal inbox. It's jsclegal@nasa.gov. That's the address, jsclegal@nasa.gov. If you have any questions or issues and you're a NASA civil servant, we can't help contractors. We don't advise contractors. But if you're a NASA civil servant, you have any legal issues or questions, please send them to jsclegal@nasa.gov. Although each issue in question, obviously, the complexity level is different, we strive to respond to you and provide advice and or guidance within 3 business days. That's our goal. And that's the best way to reach us, especially in this teleworking environment. I'll say it once more, jsclegal@nasa.gov.
All right. Thanks so much, Ted.
Thank you.